What's up? This is EJ Stewart.
What if I drop 40 days, 40 nights?
One, you can't do it.
All you are your words. If there's anything you learned about me, I'm going to keep it 100 with you.
Every morning, every night, for 40 days.
Going to be a long 40 days this year.
My skill shot will hold for your city for 40 days, 40 nights.
Rest in peace to all my ops.
For 40 days. If I can do that, then everything will be okay.
You're the guy who can't finish a sandwich. You think you can go 40 days? This isn't normal!
Oh, you're wrong, brother. I'm gonna go the distance.
Let's go!
Oh, let's go is right. What's up? This is EJ Stewart. You're watching 40 Days, 40 Nights. We got a glorious, fun show for you coming up. We have an official big-time trade in the NBA. We mentioned a bunch about James Harden. And as I fix my hair a little bit, my hair looking a little crazy on this camera, I'm realizing. Sorry about that. But no, we got a lot to talk about today, man. We got the James Harden trade. I'm going to adjust this camera a little bit also. I'm not liking this focus. There you go. Looking more crispy and clear there. No, I'm excited about this show, man. We have an official trade. James Harden officially going to Cleveland. He was traded by the Clippers. He now goes to the Cavs. Darius Garland, he now goes to the LA Clippers. We'll break that down, give expectations for both teams now as they move forward with their new all-star guards. And this was a trade that was talked about a ton. I kept waiting for when the trade was going to happen because we had these conversations, yesterday morning from the previous night that the reporting came out that James Harden and was working with the Clippers and that there had been advanced talks with the Cavs about a trade happening. The trade seemed simple. It didn't, the money matched. The players are pretty comparable, so I didn't see where, what the holdup was. Maybe potentially they were looking to see if there are other opportunities elsewhere before they actually signed on to this deal. But the deal officially happens. James Harden officially now will be going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. So what are the Cavaliers' expectations now with Harden on the squad? We'll talk about that in a little bit. We'll also talk about the NBA All-Star Game because now we have the official NBA rosters that are set. So remember, this is not going to be a typical East-West game. Now, we had East-West as the way that they came up with selecting the All-Stars this year. But remember, this is going to be a round-robin tournament that will involve two squads of Team USA up against a team comprised of world stars. Because one of the players born in America wants to represent the world, that being Karl Anthony Towns wants to represent Dominican Republic. Of course, he is half Dominican. That allowed Kawhi Leonard to make his way to this All-Star game. So it's the depth of a conspiracy. I don't know if it's really the depth of the conspiracy. Maybe at this point, so much of the conversation was about Kawhi missing it. Maybe it's the NBA trying to pour cold water on that. Also, like we heard from what I read yesterday was the idea that it actually was a lot of coaches who really were upset about the Kawhi thing, which I was shocked by. I said when we talked about this a couple of days ago, I said I didn't really expect that the coaches really would care about the Kawhi thing. But according to various reports, apparently coaches did care about it. And there are a lot of people who were not happy about it. Now, was that the reason why he didn't make the All-Star game? I don't know. But apparently coaches did feel like this was quite an egregious overstep to have this fake tree planting job that he had for this company that allegedly was an opportunity for the Clippers to circumvent the cap because the Clippers were investing in this company. Steve Ballmer, various different other investors, those were all people who were investing in aspiration. So coaches apparently didn't like it. That was why Kawhi Leonard maybe was left off the team, maybe not. Again, I guess we will actually never truly know. But we will get to everything involving the All-Star game and break down what to expect from that. We also have an addition to the Slam Dunk contest that I also want to mention as well, because we actually have an All-Star who will be participating. So that's interesting. NFLPA says that they have no appetite for an 18-game schedule, which means they are much like your boy EJ. No appetite for an 18-game schedule. I hate this idea. I hate that we've been increasing regular season games. It is mind-boggling to me that there is actually support for this. Not from the owners per se, but there are some fans or some media members who say, oh yeah, more football. No, you don't want more football. We'll talk about why you don't want that and why I'm hoping the NFLPA stands pat with their resistance towards an 18-game schedule, though I think that's what the owners certainly want. And then finally, we'll talk George Pickens. We'll talk Cowboys. I'll be honest, and you guys know I worked on Maggie and Perloff's show. It's one of the things I say almost every time I do this show, this live stream. But I worked on Maggie and Perloff show. We had a segment called Cowboy Quickie. And look, I'm in the chat. I see the commentary. I know the Cowboys evoke certain emotions from some people. And you hear the thing go, oh, why you gotta talk Cowboys so much? All you guys want to do is talk about the Cowboys. Listen, first of all, Cowboys draw a lot of attention. They are America's team. So it makes sense that they're a part of the conversation. You don't want Cowboys to be part of the conversation when it comes to national media. I have great advice for you. That's the thing about this. And I'll get to that advice in a second. Like, fans will complain about sports coverage, and to be honest, to be clear, I'm also one of them. I will also complain about sports coverage because at the end of the day, I think we're all fans. I think even if you're in the media, you should, at your core, still be somewhat of a fan. Maybe you don't present yourself as a fan, but you have to at least have an appreciation for these sports, for the love of the games, in order to want to report on it or invest in it in that kind of way to put your career on the line for it. So I also have critiques of how media covers certain things. What I will tell fans is what I tell people all the time, in just my short time kind of being in the quote unquote industry. Hate that term, but that is the term, the only way I can describe it. Is if you don't want people to talk about something, you gotta speak with your remote control. You gotta speak with your algorithm and your viewership numbers on your phone. You don't want someone to watch something, don't watch. You don't want to talk about something, don't watch. When the Cowboys are on TV on Sunday Night Football, don't watch Sunday Night Football. Don't the reality is the Cowboys get all of this attention because companies, radio stations, television stations, corporations, they see the engagement and they see the viewership that the Cowboys franchise drives. So then their content gets leaned towards the Cowboys because you want to try to get the highest, greatest denominator. I think I got that right in terms of, I was a pretty good math student back in the day, not now. It's not the lowest denominator. They want the highest denominator when it comes to the amount of, to getting an audience, the amount of people that actually want to watch your show. And they know most of the people that watch sports watch the Cowboys. They're going to talk about the Cowboys. It's not like some trade secret. I don't think I'm giving away something that's like some crazy game that nobody thought about. And my thing is like, I live this. Like when I don't like things, I just stop watching. Like I'll just put it out here. I mean, I don't for up until this past year with the ESPN getting inside the NBA, I haven't watched so much of that, but I've watched it a little bit. But like prior to that, I didn't like ESPN's coverage of the NBA. I didn't like ESPN's pregame show. I never watched. You have to have the discipline to say, even though you love the sport or whatever, you love the content, but you're supporting them by just flicking that channel and putting it on the TV. So I was like, hey, listen, I don't support how they are covering the league. I don't think that they're engaging in a way that is engaging fans in a smart way. I don't think that they're teaching anybody anything. I said you have to make a strong decision. Say, you know what? I'm just not going to watch when those guys are on. And, it's nothing personal against them at all. It's just, that's the only way I could foster any kind of change, right? And then look what happened. Eventually, now we have a new pregame show. That is how you foster change. You don't want people to talk about the Cowboys. Tell you and your friends, stop watching shows that talk about the Cowboys. Stop watching games where the Cowboys are getting, 30 million people watching on Sunday Night Football, or 33 million people watching on Thanksgiving. Don't watch. It's simple. So people used to complain about that sometimes on Maggie and Perloff show, not chat, YouTube chat. Shout out to the folks in the YouTube chat today. I love John Lean, who's a Cowboy fan. He's like, I love Cowboys. They've been irrelevant on the field for decades. And then, of course, he's an Eagles fan, so go Birds there. Understand the sarcasm a little bit there. And Eagles fans actually don't mind the Cowboys being talked about because they're such a S show that Eagles fans, please talk about the Cowboys. Talk about how much of a joke they are, how much of a mess they are. So that's a little game for the fans in terms of like engagement and how it works and sports commentary and how it works. People will complain about not liking certain things. Don't watch it if you don't like it. And trust me, it will change the dynamic of how sports are covered. I will guarantee you. Women's basketball, for example, was not covered to the level it is covered now until fans decided they wanted to watch women's basketball. They wanted to watch Caitlin Clark. She was the driving force behind this movement. But then the women's basketball as a whole also started seeing growth in numbers. Women's sports is just seeing growth in numbers, and almost across the board. Softball now does like numbers it never did before. Volleyball does numbers it never did before. Like women's sports is just in, but obviously women's basketball exploded with the rise of Caitlin Clark. And guess what? He started talking about women's basketball. He started talking about Caitlin Clark. Like those things started to matter because fans with their remote controls, with their phones, with their smart TVs, with their tablets, they decided that women's basketball mattered and Caitlin Clark mattered. And then that's changed. Now you can argue you don't like the way it's being covered. We can argue that too. And then that's where you should also make your decisions with how you watch the coverage of the game. If you don't like how it's being covered, you don't like certain dynamics of it. So it's a weird way to kind of start the show, but that's kind of what I love about doing 40 Days and 40 Nights and doing a live stream. I mean, obviously, when you do a radio show, sometimes it has to be a little more structured and like we're going to do this in the A block and we got to hit this open. And sometimes I just think you can just stumble into fun, interesting conversations, and I don't want to be like holding things off just because I got to get to talking about Kawhi Leonard. I mean, excuse me, not Kawhi Leonard, but James Harden, which we will in a second. We talked about James Harden a ton yesterday, but no, I think that's something that I hope fans realize. Hope they understand that they have a lot of power, and I don't think they feel like they know they do, and they complain about all the things that they dislike about sports coverage. And I'm like, I promise, if you guys you stop watching the Cowboys, we will stop talking about them. But until that happens, the Cowboys will still be talked about, and we're going to talk about George Pickens today because he made some pretty candid comments about what his free agency is going to look like and what signing a long-term deal with the Cowboys is going to look like. And he quoted a great Bronx rapper.
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Price went up. Literally what George Pickens said when it came to his free agency. So we'll talk about what that's going to cost the Cowboys potentially and whether or not he's worth it for them. So we got a lot to do, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm really excited. New Generation Media. This is 40 Days and 40 Nights. Again, streaming live on YouTube. Shout out to the folks in the YouTube chat. We're also streaming live on X, EJ_Stewart. Streaming live on Instagram, Action EJ. If you're on the YouTube chat, or even if you're not, head over to New Generation Media on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a like in this video. All of that support helps the channel in a major way. Helps me in a major way. So if you're enjoying the content, you've been enjoying 40 Days, 40 Nights. I can't believe we're on day 18. We are approaching the halfway point of 40 Days and 40 Nights. This has been so much fun so far. There's so much more I want to do. And again, because sometimes you just get inspired, and I think yesterday it kind of hit me. Oh shoot, like this is like not coming to an end. We're halfway there. But after this week, there'll be less shows left than the shows I have done, which is kind of crazy to think about. And I was like, oh man, like there's still a lot of people I want to get on. We've had great guests so far. We've had Ray Jarvis, we've had Maggie Gray, we've had Manny Rodriguez, though that stream and the buffering and all the things didn't go very well. The quality of the stream didn't go so well. I really hope we can get Manny on again. Maybe we'll try to do a test run before I actually go live with him. We've had my brother Kendall Stewart, who's been doing weekly Friday appearances that have been great. There was one that didn't go as great, but most of them have been great. And I think you guys have seen, if you've been watching those Friday night streams, he's a star. He's so smart, and he's so brilliant, and he's just charismatic. He's just great. And we do a great sports show together. We do a great Hero Talk Together show with my brother Shamari, who I have to get on the show soon. I'm going to see if I can try to get him on next week for sure after the Super Bowl. But Kendall's the man, and he's been awesome. Who else have we had? We got Mike Fliegelman. He came in talking Jets. I mean, we've had some great guests, but there's more and more people I want. I feel like I really built up the idea that I wanted to share this platform. And like, man, I got to get this going. So I started sending a lot of texts yesterday saying, yo, man, you want to come on the show soon? Yo, you want to come on the show soon? And again, we got some yeses, not anything for this week yet, but we got some yeses for next week that I'm really excited about. So we're gonna chug this thing along, man. We're gonna keep it going. But 40 Days and 40 Nights has been a great run so far. Again, shout out to the folks watching on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you follow me on X, EJ_Stewart. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Action EJ. We are streaming live on all of those platforms. And like with every episode, again, if you can't watch these shows because you're on the run, because you're working out, because you're driving, because you're on the train, whatever the case may be, totally fine. Pop in your earphones. Go to your favorite podcast app, search New Generation Media and New Generation Podcast Network. Sorry, New Generation Podcast Network. That's what you will search. And you'll find all episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights on our podcast channel that includes all other content involved with New Generation Media. Just head over again to our podcast channel, New Generation Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Head over there, search New Generation Podcast Network. All episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights are up there, including last night's episode. So speaking of last night, I think it literally dropped maybe 2 or 3 minutes after last night's stream ended, which is always how it goes. But that's the beauty of like doing this show in this way. It's not like a weekly podcast or a twice a week podcast, something like that, where like you drop one and then like something happens right after. You gotta wait days to get to that story, and by the time you're able to get to it, it may be kind of cooked and nobody wants to talk about it anymore. The beauty, if there is any kind of beauty in doing this insane two shows a day run that I'm on, is even when something drops immediately after a show ends, it's only about 10 hours or 8 hours or less from when I'm back on, so I can go back to talking about it because I won't be that old. So it's now official. James Harden is headed to the Clippers. The Cavs completing the trade of James Harden. They send Darius Garland and a second-round pick to the Clippers. So the deal is straightforward. We actually got some comments from James Harden, who actually spoke to ESPN on the record following this trade. So, of course, these two sides, the Harden and the Clippers, they worked together as Harden sought a, quote, win-now opportunity. And the Clippers agreed to, again, work with the 11-time All-Star to find him a new home. And Harden told ESPN he didn't want to be seen as kind of, quote, holding up the future for the Clippers, and sees an opportunity to win the East with the squad that Cleveland put together. I think it's interesting with Harden that there's a couple things there. So he says he didn't want to hold up their future, which tells me Clippers told him, we're not signing you to any long-term deal. Sorry. Maybe we'll go a year-to-year basis at this point in your career, but if we sign you to a long-term deal, or you demand some long-term deal that we have to agree to keep us relevant, it's going to screw up our cap. And we can't be in a position, given your age, given Kawhi Leonard's age, where we're prioritizing this pairing, this tandem of, you and Kawhi Leonard. There has to be a pivot at some point. It's not to say the pivot had to be right now. It's not to say the pivot had to be, even maybe this offseason. But that pivot was coming soon. So when Harden says, I don't want to be seeing someone holding up their future, that tells me there were candid conversations where Clippers said that we know you're nearing the end here. So we can't just say, hey, here's 4 years, $160 million, and keep it moving. That would be actually quite crippling to us moving forward. And Harden understands that. And I actually kind of respect Harden for, we can argue whether or not he's kind of trying to sound noble when he's at the end of the day requesting a trade, though, and we'll get to that point in a second. But I think that is a level of honesty and level of self-evaluation. I think that is fair to say. And I appreciate him actually saying, yeah, if I keep hanging around here demanding money and demanding years, and they keep giving it to me, there's no way the Clippers are going to get out of this hellhole they're in. So he says that. He also, though, noted that with the East, he sees an opportunity to win, which is just going to be the conversation for a lot of these teams when we talk about this wide-open Eastern Conference. James Harden, knowing who he is, knowing the teams he's wanted to play for. Of course, he came up in Houston. He wanted to go to Houston. Eventually got his way to Houston. He played in Brooklyn. He didn't really want to go there, but he did go to Brooklyn. He wanted to play in Philadelphia. He wanted to play for the LA Clippers. This is somebody that seemed to want to play in bigger markets for places that had, life, off the court, lifestyle, entertainment. Like, these are the kind of places Harden has seemed to want to find himself in, and he seems to have always found himself in those kind of positions. The fact that he's willing to go to Cleveland tells me that he really does see an opportunity to win there. And he sees an Eastern Conference that he feels is wide open, and now you got a backcourt tandem of Harden and Mitchell. So I think a lot of this stemmed from him saying, I got to get out of the Western Conference. I look at this team. He's probably playing for the Clippers saying, yo, we have a pretty good team now. Like, we're playing pretty good. We've won 16 of 20. But as good as we're playing, because of the hole we dug ourselves in. And because of the reality of the Western Conference is what is our realistic opportunity to win a championship? The honest answer is there is no realistic opportunity in the Western Conference. There isn't. They're not going to beat the Thunder in any playoff series. And if they somehow are able to avoid a first-round matchup with the Thunder, some of these other teams they'd have to beat in order to even get to the Thunder. Is it impossible? Maybe not impossible, but it seems improbable that you're seeing the Clippers make some major run to a conference championship, something like that, despite how well they're playing. The Eastern Conference, whole different ballgame. The Pistons are the number 1 seed. The Knicks are the team that came in as the favorites and probably have the most talent. They're playing well. They won another game last night. I think that's their, I want to say, 7th win in a row. 6 or 7, something like that. But Pistons, how real are they as the number 1 seed? This is not a team that's won a playoff series in more than a decade. So what are they really about? The Knicks, they've been a little playoff tested. They've gone deep into the postseason, but they've teetered a little bit. They're definitely a formidable team. And then after that, Celtics don't have Jason Tatum. Are the Raptors for real? Are the Sixers going to stay healthy? We didn't even get to talk about, by the way. I didn't even talk about it on Monday. Paul George suspended. He's serving a 25-game suspension for a drug violation. He claims that it is something involving improper medication to handle his mental health issues. I have no idea what that means. I see other people try to explain it and try to talk about it, and they don't seem to understand what it means. No one seems to understand what that means when you say you took improper meds to handle mental health. Did he go on an ayahuasca retreat? Is that illegal? I mean, I don't know. But I mean, first of all, if it is, something that is like detrimental to him and his body, like I hope Paul George gets whatever help he needs to handle whatever drug issue he may be dealing with. It doesn't sound like it's PED related, so I don't know what's going on with that. So Paul George, obviously, he's got to sit down. He's got to take his suspension, but I hope everything is okay with him just from a human standpoint if the mental health issues are that challenging where he's taking things he shouldn't be taking. But Philly now, a team who I think is kind of becoming a spicy pick for people. I think people are looking at Maxey, how he's played, looking at their explosive backcourt with him and Edgecombe, and then seeing a Joel Embiid who looks healthy right now. Now it is February. I caution people. Let's see how he looks in April. But right now he does look good, and he's playing really well. He played so well that I think he had an outside shot to backdoor his way into the All-Star game. That's how well he's been playing. But I think you look at all these teams and you're saying, is there an obvious team coming out of the Eastern Conference? And is there someone that looks far and head and shoulders above everybody else? I think you'd say no right now. So if you're James Harden, you say, all right, Cleveland's been teetering. They have not had the same kind of, chemistry they had last season. I'll say this, we all talked about how devastating the Knicks' loss was to the Pacers last year. Maybe not all. Maybe it's just Knicks fans. But I think a lot of people talked about, especially Halliburton, the shot and the choke sign. It's imagery that kind of is stuck, I think, with this team and the images from last year's postseason besides torn Achilles, right, including Halliburton's. Was Halliburton's choke sign against the Knicks in Game 1 and how that comeback really just almost immediately flipped the script of how that series may have gone. But it seems to me that the Pacers and Halliburton did way more damage to the Cavs and their psyche and their, confidence than he did to the Knicks. The Knicks are they're kind of in their own world. They have their own issues. Sometimes they're playing great. They look like world beaters. And then Carl Towns gets moody for some random reason, having nothing to do with any of the losses from last year. It's more to do with, Tibbs being fired and who's getting traded. It doesn't seem like Halliburton did seem to break the Knicks in that way. And the Knicks are still playing fine for the most part after that, besides that really bad stretch. I think the Cavs, they really did. I think they have some battle scars and some wounding from last season, how that season ended. They won 65 games last year, I think. Something crazy. They were a absolute dominant team in the Eastern Conference last year. The Eastern Conference takes a step back, and yes, they've had some injuries, but considering the team they have, you would have thought, okay, this is a team that's still at least a 55, 60-win team probably. And again, they've been kind of mediocre in the Eastern Conference. So I think Harden saw an opportunity here where he said, hey, this is a team that has not gotten over what happened last season, but they still have the same guys that won 60-something games outside of a few guys. They still have Donovan Mitchell. They still have Evan Mobley. They still have Jared Allen. Let's see if maybe I go there and I can put them over the top, because that's a team that on paper definitely should be a title contender in the East. So Harden goes to the Cavaliers. I'll be honest. I said it yesterday and I'll say it again. I don't love the Harden Mitchell thing. And I got to shout out TJ Vizero. Apologies if I didn't pronounce your name right. But he's in the chat already saying Harden Mitchell combo is a odd fit to me. I agree. Yeah, I don't really love it. To me, I said this yesterday and I'll say it again. I fully understood the Cavs when they trade Darius Garland. Fully understand it. And I actually like Darius Garland. I think he's a good player. I tend to like guards. I was a guard growing up. But I like Darius Garland. I think he's a good player. He's a very good shooter. He's really good when it comes to he's an underrated passer. Good in the pick and roll. He has his limitations. He's a little smaller. He's not a great defender. So pairing him with Mitchell, I understood the idea because offensively that causes a lot of damage. And Garland is so comfortable playing off the ball as a shooter that playing with kind of a ball dominant two in Mitchell, it didn't affect him offensively really. So he was still an all-star. Like he still was a good player for them when he was healthy. So I understood that fit. I understood trying it, despite some of the issues that they're both small. They both don't defend that well. And Garland is probably still better suited with the ball in his hands more. They tried it 2 years, more than 3 years now. It seems like that is not a recipe for them to win a championship, clearly, right? So I understand, okay, he tried it, didn't work, we move on. He's yellow, injury prone, he's small. Let's see if we could get someone for him. I just felt like if they were going to make a change like that, it would have made more sense to get someone that complemented Mitchell better. Like, if you were going to say, okay, we're going to trade Garland for another guard, like I mentioned the other day, like the trade that kind of was being thrown around there, all throughout the offseason was this Garland for Jalen Suggs and plus compensation pack. And I said, that makes sense. Suggs is not as good as as Darius Garland, but Suggs does all the things that complements Mitchell well. He plays off the ball. He's a excellent defensive player. So if Mitchell, you don't want him guarding a certain two guard, Suggs has the size to guard that too because he's about 6'4". Again, he can also be a point of attack defender playing the point, but because he's not like a ball dominant guy, he can play off the ball and Mitchell can do whatever he wants and you'll be fine. Now you play with that team. The Cavs, in theory, could put 4 good defensive players on the floor before they trade DeAndre Hunter. 4 good defensive players on the floor next to Donovan Mitchell. That's the kind of, now you got it takes 2 to tango. They could have tried this and the Magic said F out of here. So I'm not saying that, you blew an opportunity at a trade that you had. I don't know if they could have made that trade. But that was a rumor that those sides have been talking and it didn't come through. That's the kind of trade I thought made sense. I said, yeah, I like that. That's the kind of thing you could do. Because then also, again, it wouldn't be just Suggs. You probably get another piece from Orlando to make it work. So, all right, cool. That's something I get. James Harden, to me, doesn't complement Mitchell well. Harden is not as comfortable playing off the ball. Harden is not a good defender. And to me, if you were going to make that switch, I would have wanted to get either a bigger guy or someone who defended better. And Harden is taller and bigger than Garland, but he's such a nothing defensively that it almost, to me, doesn't really matter that he's taller. Like, I don't think he brings, like, their backcourt got bigger, but in what way? I guess maybe offensively, like Harden, of course, draws fouls. Harden can attack smaller guards. So I guess maybe offensively there's a little bit of a difference there. But besides that, I don't really see so much of how much this is a huge increase or a huge plus from that standpoint. The other aspect about this too is, again, this is a team that I just mentioned has postseason battle scars and maybe some mental healing that they have to do from some of these postseason shortcomings. Is James Harden the guy that's going to put you over the top? I mean, this guy is kind of notorious for his postseason shortcomings. Fair or unfair, he had a horrendous Game 7 last year against the Denver Nuggets. And he's had terrible Game 7s, terrible elimination games. His stats for elimination games and Game 7s are putrid. Is he the guy I'm going to feel confident in that in a big 7-game series or in a big spot he's going to come through? It seems like, again, maybe you could say Garland's value wasn't super high, so, like, what were you going to ask for? I don't know. I just think I would have asked for a piece that made more sense. It didn't have to be someone as big a name as James Harden. He's a huge name. He's having a good season. And he's obviously a future Hall of Famer. He's an 11-time All-Star. But no one feels that they went for the biggest guy they could possibly get for Harden. For Garland. And not the greatest fit next to Donovan Mitchell for in getting James Harden. That was my concern with it. So, you look at the East. I mean, the Cavs, I kind of pause and say they're a better team. I think Harden is better than Garland is right now. So, I guess I would say they're a slightly better team. Do I think their odds increased dramatically because of adding James Harden? I do not. I think whatever you thought of the Cavs coming into this postseason, I would probably think the same thing. So if you were high on them, you were a team that you were someone who said, hey, I think they're kind of being underrated. They've been playing really good ball late. That's another thing, too. They've won 8 of 10. So it seemed like whatever early season swoon, that hangover of trying to get over what happened in postseason last year, and that some of that, again, just included injuries, it seems like they started to work their way out of that. And then you say, okay, now's the time to make the trade. That's something that kind of is kind of odd to me, in my opinion. But you look at the East, they're 5th right now. They're tied for the 4th spot with the Raptors. Raptors, I guess, have the tiebreakers. That's why the Raptors have them in the standings. They look to me, we'll see. Could they jump the Knicks? Could they get to the top? I don't think they're catching Detroit. 8 games is too much. Could they find their way in that 2 spot? Could they catch New York and Boston? Yes, I think it's possible. But again, do I think in terms of how I view their chances in the West, in the East, do I think that is increased dramatically? No, I think, to me, in the matchup against, let's put them against the Pistons, for example, okay? Who is guarding Cade Cunningham still? They still don't have an answer for that. Nothing they did. In fact, some of the trades they made, again, you lose a guy like DeAndre Hunter, like they may have actually hurt their opportunity in terms of putting together a team that would make sense again in that kind of matchup. So who's guarding Cade Cunningham? I think Detroit, in terms of their physicality in the paint, I think that they would cause problems for the big front line of the Cavs with Duren and Isaiah Stewart. So I don't think that the Cavs usually have they typically feel like they have a physicality advantage, though they have not against certain teams like the Knicks because of their big front line. I think you don't have that against Detroit. I would take Detroit in the series against them. The Knicks are extremely confident when they play the Cavs because they've beaten them in the postseason before. And if you're the Knicks, again, same thing. Have they found who's guarding Jalen Brunson? They still don't have an answer to that. So I don't know who's guarding Jalen Brunson. I think the Knicks, in terms of their defense and how they set up, because they have OG and Bridges, I think the Mitchell Harden thing is not as much of an issue for them. In fact, I actually think the Knicks may match them a little better in terms of just match them defensively, because the Knicks now, with Garland out there, was a little weird, because that means you had to put likely Bridges on Garland, and then OG was guarding Mitchell, and OG can guard Mitchell, but he's kind of quick even for someone like OG. Harden probably is a much better matchup for OG, and because you've already gotten rid of Garland, now Bridges can guard Mitchell, and that's probably a more favorable matchup there. So in some ways, the matchups actually work a little better for the Knicks, and I don't think they found anybody to guard Jalen Brunson. So I lean Knicks. Let's go to the Celtics. I think the Celtics are a weird team, but they just added Nikola Vucevic. That'd be a close, tough series. But again, these are not. I don't see these matches where I'm like, oh, they got so much better. I think Philly, if they have to play them in the first round, I think Philly's getting them out of there. I do. So I'm not as high on the Cavs side of this with James Harden. I'll get to the Clippers part in a second on Garland, but just real quick to wrap up the Harden aspect of it. Harden also, when he had this interview with ESPN, wanted to deny this idea that he requested a trade, because the narrative is like, man, this guy is the all-time great when it comes to requesting trades. Like I saw one of the guys, apologies, I don't remember which one. One of the guys from No Dunks, formerly known as the Starters, put out a thing, or it wasn't even a tweet. I think it was like part of a clip that I saw. That he was like, Harden is the GOATer, greatest of all trade requesters, greatest of all time trade requesters, something like that. It was something so funny, but he doesn't like that narrative. And he said, when talked about, hey, you requested a trade, he said that wasn't the case at all. in life, not even basketball, when things don't work out, there are ways to end things in relationships without having to crack each other. Okay, maybe we just don't see a future with each other. Maybe we just outgrew each other. Whatever the case may be, I feel like our situations weren't like that. Why do I get the impression James Harden is like, he's used that line a lot. Oh, it's not you, it's me. Or it's just time. I get the impression that Harden has used that, not just in basketball, I'm saying. I think that is something that he's quite familiar with, it feels like, with how comfortable he was willing to go to that analogy when it comes to a relationship, when it comes to a team and playing basketball. I will say this, like, in theory, he's right. Yes, I think that you don't, like, people can request trades. It doesn't have to become like this insane situation. It never seems to happen that way. It always seems to be hard feelings. But yeah, he's right in theory. And it doesn't seem like there's any bad contention or bad blood with this situation. But I do think he has to see, when you have a team that is playing some of the best basketball in the NBA, you're the highest team in the NBA, arguably. And now's when you're saying, hey, it's not you, it's me. And you don't see why people look at you and say, yeah, man, you this is what you do. You quit on teams. You're not a foxhole guy. You're always looking for your next best opportunity. Like, he has to see that. I get all this, hey, man, there's no bad, hard feelings. The Clippers aren't mad at me. And maybe they're saying they're not mad at him. And to be honest, maybe they're like, hey, listen, like, I'm glad we don't have to deal with whatever headache was going to happen with us trying to convince James Harden that we can't pay him. Because we know last time someone said they couldn't pay James Harden was at a Chinese basketball camp in front of some 10-year-olds saying that Daryl Morey's a liar and I'll never play for a team run by Daryl Morey again. Like, we know that happened. So I'm sure the Clippers are like, listen, like, we're playing great. It sucks that you're just quitting on us, but at least we don't have to deal with that anymore. We'll take Darius Garland and we'll just figure out if we can keep the good times rolling with this guy. But in theory, yes, it doesn't seem like the Clippers are that mad. But I'm sure the Clippers were not trying to trade James Harden. We saw Tyronn Lue the other day was just like, would you want Kawhi Leonard? Would you want James Harden to stay a Clipper? He said any team would want James Harden. He's like, yeah, I mean, no, obviously some teams maybe would not need him, but you know what I mean. Like, any team in theory would want a player of the caliber of James Harden, especially a team like the Clippers that are fighting for their playoff lives. This is not the time we want to trade your starting point guard who's averaging 25 and 8. It's not the time to do that. So the Harden trying to switch to the flip this. Oh no, this is just us. This is kumbaya, and this is just a beautiful thing of people realizing that we're not for each other anymore. I'm like, you approach them wanting this. They didn't come to you and say, yo man, how you like Cleveland? We know when they didn't ask you that, because they know if they say the wrong thing to you, you may go on Instagram Live or go to a basketball camp somewhere and flame them, or go to a club and flame them. Like, they know that, so they didn't come to you with this. You came to them with this. So I mean, again, it doesn't mean like you came in and started saying, oh, like, you know, I'm going to go crazy and go scorch earth around and get what I want. But no, you did request a trade. This one was not as contentious as the other ones, but it still happened. You still definitely requested a trade. And it's like I said before, man, like, I think these athletes, you know, and to be honest, maybe Harden kind of gets what I was talking about yesterday, which is like, you keep just like screwing over every team you go for, there's going to be no one to hang your jersey up when you're done. And I think this is Harden trying to smooth over any narrative about him quitting on the Clippers and quitting on LA. He's from LA. I'm assuming as soon as his career is over, that is where he's going to want to spend the majority of his life, I assume. I don't know. So I just find that funny that he was trying to put this narrative like, oh no, it's not you, it's me. Or, oh no, it's just, sometimes it's just time. We grow apart. It's just like relationships. I'm like, okay, sure. That's how Harden wants to spend this. That's all good. Quickly on the Garland side of this, before we move on, I know I spent a lot of time on the Harden stuff. I wanted to give it as much time as it needed. But on the Darius Garland side of this, I kind of like this. Like, I kind of like this idea of Garland playing with the Clippers, going back to being a natural point guard. I think he fits pretty well next to Kawhi Leonard, to be honest, because another guy, again, he is such a good shooter off the ball. Kawhi Leonard draws so much attention that he'll have no problem being a second banana there. And Garland, we kind of forget, like, was one of the up-and-coming guards in this league. And when Donovan Mitchell came over, it meant Garland had to kind of share the ball. It wasn't like he was off the ball. But now he gets to go back to being on the ball as a point guard, which we haven't seen him do in a little bit. I like to see how he plays in that role. Again, I like his game. I always liked his game. Health is going to be the big thing. The contract is not horrendous. I think after this year, he has 2 more years. That's plenty of time to evaluate for the Clippers. Like, hey, like, what do we have in Garland? Is he someone that can be, the kind of like the engine or floor general of a team that is a perennial playoff team without, a sidekick or a Batman like Donovan Mitchell in his backcourt? Or is he, we're going to learn a lot about Darius Garland these next few years, I think. He's got to get healthy. That toe has been, again, a nagging thing for him, and he's been in and out of the lineup this year. That's going to be a huge plus. But I kind of like the Clippers for a team that is so old. I mean, I don't know what it is now that they traded hard a 36-year-old for a guy who's 26. But I have to assume that the Clippers are the oldest roster in the NBA. I mean, they got Brook Lopez on that team. They got Kawhi Leonard. They're ancient. They had to get younger. I don't even, I don't even care about, Darius Garland maybe having some issues with some health. And they just had to get younger. They had to get younger. So you add Garland, he'll probably start in the backcourt with Chris Dunn. And that works too, because Chris Dunn can, guard those point of attack guys. The question with Garland was going to be, will he be able to defend enough for his offense to be that much of a factor? It wasn't enough in Cleveland because his offense was not as much front and center because Donovan Mitchell was there. The Clippers will need his offense. So I'm curious, again, how this fit shakes out. So we'll see what ends up happening with the Clippers and the Cavs. Cavs trade for James Harden. Darius Garland goes to the Clippers along with a second-round pick. I was a little surprised the Cavs had to give up second-round pick compensation to get Harden, to get off of Garland, because Garland's contract, I don't think it's awful. But I mean, I think the health stuff is probably why. I think it's like, hey, yes, we're giving you a guy who's an expiring contract essentially, and it's kind of like a wash when it comes to salary and skill and stuff. But we're taking on a bit of a risk with Garland because of how injured he's been. I assume that's why the second round pick had to be attached. That's not a price I think that would have deterred me if I liked James Harden if I was the Cavs, which is why they did the move. Do I like the move in general? Not really. So let's stay. Actually, never thought we'd have so much Clippers talk on a day 18 of 4 days and 4 nights when I started this thing, especially when I started this thing. Clippers were completely dead when it came to the standings. But we did get some news also. Kawhi Leonard, he will be now an all-star. So the commissioner made the selection. He was an added player to the all-star team this year. So that kind of ends what I felt very fun conspiracy that the NBA was keeping Kawhi Leonard, who's averaging 27 points, having one of the best years he's had in years, because of the aspiration scandal that was unveiled by Pablo Torre. This scandal that alleges that Kawhi Leonard was being paid a no-show job by a tree planting company as an ambassador because the Clippers were trying to circumvent the cap in a way to give Kawhi some money under the table. It's an incredible, crazy story that the NBA has, to its credit, I guess, done a good job of kind of squashing that. That was all people were talking about on the internet for definitely a couple of days. I'd argue even weeks, because it felt like Pablo Torre kept dripping this thing. It wasn't like it was just all information came out at once. It was just we kept adding information to it as the days and weeks went on. So that's why the story got so big. But to be honest, once the basketball started and the Clippers were so bad, they just wasn't a story. So, but it was interesting because, again, All-Star game, it kind of becomes, All-Star weekend kind of becomes a recap of what the NBA season has been so far, because so many people haven't been watching that will watch the rest of the way. People that have invested in football season, whether it's college or the NFL, people that just, as the NBA regular season kind of becomes what it's become, which is not as taken seriously. People who are saying, all right, I guess I probably start watching this now because we're getting closer to the playoff push to see what the hell's going on. So a lot of NBA All-Star Weekend kind of becomes the jobs of previously TNT, but now NBC and Peacock to recap kind of what the season has been for a lot of these players, a lot of these teams. So the fact that so much of the conversation was oh wait, Kawhi Leonard's here. Hey, remember when that aspiration thing happened? I thought it was a conspiracy that made sense that maybe the NBA said we don't want that to be part of the dialogue for how this first half of the season has gone. Let's put anybody else in there. LeBron, okay, you're old and you're averaging only 20 points a game. I don't care. You're in the All-Star game. But they just threw somebody else in there to make sure that it wasn't Kawhi. Though, again, according to Again, I don't remember exactly who reported it, but somebody reported it that was reputable that said that there were coaches. They might have been Windhorst, I want to say. I don't know who it was. No, Windhorst said the execs were talking about it, but somebody said that those coaches, there were some coaches that were mad. Some coaches that legitimately were like, I know guys get paid under the table, but this is like legitimately ridiculous. I was surprised at how upset, quite frankly, coaches were of all the people. I would have thought owners would have been more upset. Maybe that's because owners are doing it and we don't know. But apparently coaches really thought this was a true affront to the league and to the NBA. So he didn't get picked by the coaches. He does get added by Adam Silver. So Adam Silver says, hey, don't bring any conspiracy to me. I'm not someone trying to keep him out of the All-Star game. See, I just put him in. So that ends that aspect of it. But what we learned from this is that now we have the roster set. So you say, okay, why was Kawhi Leonard? He actually, what Kawhi Leonard added. He wasn't added because the team lost a guy. Typically, you got a guy added to the All-Star game. It's because, we have a guy that's injured, so we need to put somebody else on the team. This is not the case. He's actually just being added to the team. But that's happening. And, man, if you want to put your conspiracy caps on that the NBA is not trying to do damage control for him not making it, sure. I'm going to say that's not the case. But he's being added because Karl-Anthony Towns, who's, of course, for the New York Knicks, he wants to represent the Dominican Republic for this All-Star game. That's going to be a USA versus World round-robin tournament. So because he goes to the World squad, the two Team USA squads, one of the teams would have had one less guy that they needed. Each team needs to have at least, I think 8 guys, I want to say. It makes sense, yeah, 8, 24 guys. So because they would have less guys, they needed somebody else to fill one of the spots. So Kawhi Leonard got added in that way. So we'll actually show you guys the roster here. So this is the Team USA versus World roster for the All-Star game. So I'm going to scroll down just a little bit so you can see. I think this is almost everybody. Yeah, I guess I'm going to flip right here. Okay. Oh, and I just got rid of it. That's great. Let's try that one more time. Let's see. There we go. All right, so we're going to try this one more time. Move this up so you can see all the names. Okay, so there you go. So those are your Team USA and World rosters. So you have one Team USA team. It's going to have Scotty Barnes, Devin Booker, Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, Anthony Edwards, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Johnson, and Tyrese Maxey. You got the other Team USA team that has Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Donovan Mitchell, and Norman Powell. And then the World team that will have Giannis Antetokounmpo, Deni Avdija, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, Pascal Siakam, the aforementioned Dominican Republic representative Karl-Anthony Towns, and Victor Wembanyama. We have no idea how these teams are put together, by the way, from what I can tell. It sounds like, I don't know if there was a random pick'em. We know, obviously, you just have to formulate as many world players as they could. And they already had 8, but then Karl-Anthony Towns wanted to go over there, so that made it 9. So, okay, that part we got. I don't know how this became the breakdown for the Team USA guys, but it definitely seems like you have kind of like an old head team versus a younger team. Like, I see LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry all in the same team. And it's like, all right, somebody get the Bengay or somebody get the Icy Hot ready because they're going to need it playing together with that team. And even the other guys that are there, even the guys that are in their prime, they're not like young players per se, like Donovan Mitchell or Jalen Brunson or even Jaylen Brown, right? And then you got the other side. Devin Booker, I assume, is probably the oldest guy on that other team. But then, like, Scotty Barnes, super young. Cade Cunningham, super young. Jalen Duren, super young. Anthony Edwards, young. Chet, young. Jalen, young. Tyrese Maxey, young. So, clearly, again, they decided to go with a theme of, like, old heads, new heads, and then world team. I don't know if it made it all that balanced in terms of the Team USA. I feel like, looking at it off rip, I feel like the middle squad right there definitely looks like the better Team USA squad than the one on the left. Just kind of eyeballing it. Now, they don't have a lot of size, which is a problem. They don't have a center. I'm looking at it now. They have all small guys. Kevin Durant is the tallest guy on the team. He's 7 feet tall, but he's not a true center. So that's a little problematic. The other team has more size, so they can put together probably a more realistic kind of team, but they don't have necessarily the star power, I would say, of the middle squad that has all those guys that are established guys. I don't know how this is going to work, so just real quickly, I want to get to the NBA All-Star rule, how this is going to break down, because remember, this is going to be a different game than normal. So the NBA All-Star game this year, you're going to have a round-robin tournament. So what's going to happen is you're going to have 4 games, 3 teams. How it's going to work is they're going to play 12-minute games with the top 2 teams advancing to the championship. So this is not going to be a game where it's going to be, you play a full, 48-minute game to see who wins. That's not how this is going to work anymore. It's changed. So now it's going to be you play this tournament. There'll be game 1, which will be U.S. Stars versus World in a 12-minute game. So that's essentially like a quarter. And then U.S. Stripes will then play the winner of game 1, which is the Stars versus the World. And then once that happens, you'll then have a game 3, which will be the U.S. Stripes versus the losing team from game 1. Then you have the championship team, which will be the top 2 teams from round robin play. If all 3 teams finish 1-1-1 after the games, the first tiebreaker will be point differential across the games. I feel like me just trying to explain this, it feels like this is too much. It feels like this is too much. Like this is a lot to explain to people. They're gonna basically, because there will be 4 12-minute games. Essentially, you get your 12 quarters of action. Basically, the whole issue with this whole thing is, will the players play with any effort? That essentially is all that matters, and all we really care about is, will there be any effort in this game? If there is effort and the guys do play hard or play, I'm not saying play like this is game 7 of the finals, but go 65%, go 70%. Basically, like, treat this like, think about a regular season game that is completely meaningless. Do like 60% of what that looks like, and I think that we will be happy with the All-Star game. This format, will that actually get you that kind of game? I don't think so. I made it clear that I think there are only 2 ways to save the All-Star game, if it's even savable. It just might not be savable. We have a group of guys who, I've said, I think this is, because of stuff like this, the corniest generation of stars we've had. And I say that because in yesteryear, we had stars who, again, they weren't playing like it was game 7, but they wanted to put on a good show for the fans. They wanted to celebrate the game, celebrate the fans, and they gave some effort to show that, hey, you're seeing a cool basketball game, seeing the greatest players in the world. This is exciting. The way it's always been described is like, this is like the greatest pickup game you could watch, but it's going to be in front of the entire world. That's how it should be taken, like a pickup game. There are guys who play pickup games on, at UCLA or at Chris Brickley's gym in New York, Black Ops basketball. They play those games way harder than they do the freaking All-Star game. And there's nothing, to be clear, like there's, I guess you're getting better, but there's nothing to be gained by getting hurt in that either, just like there's nothing to be gained getting hurt in an All-Star game. So the reasoning why these guys don't give any effort it is nonsensical to me. But to me, there's only 2 ways to really save this thing. Number 1, if you're going to do a USA World thing, just make it USA World. Just like 1 game. Just make it a 12-minute game, a 12-minute quarter, 4-quarter game, 12 guys from the world, 12 guys from Team USA. And I know the conversation will go, oh, well, now it's going to be a bunch of guys that were really good that missed the All-Star game. Well, tough-ish. I'm sorry. You guys play the stupid games and you win the stupid prizes with us having to do this nonsense because you guys just couldn't give some effort in an All-Star game. So now we got to do this stupid crap. So to me, I feel like because if there's anything there are NBA players that take pride in, especially the international guys, they do take pride in representing their countries. And they do take pride in being from outside the U.S., becoming NBA stars. And there's nothing more they would love than to be a team that has Team USA across their chest. And I think enough embarrassments by Team USA losing to the world will probably get the game a little more stakes. And maybe that's an opportunity to make this thing great. I don't know if losing like this round robin where we played 1 quarter and we won or lost, I don't know if that's going to really juice anybody's appetite in any way. But I think a 12-minute 4-quarter game, that I think, yes, I think that does get guys more riled up. And I think you do have potentially more on the line and guys playing with a little more effort. The other thing I would say is we got to put something on the line. I know people hate. So it's weird. I guess the people who hated the MLB All-Star Game deciding the World Series, they were very loud. I don't know if they were the majority, I liked it. I was a kid, obviously, but I liked it. I thought that it made the All-Star game interesting. It made it fun, and I liked having to watch to see like who won because it actually meant something. I actually think in basketball it makes way more sense to do this than it does in baseball, because in baseball, like you're being realistic with like, hey, like pitchers, like this is an All-Star game, like we're not gonna pitch Randy Johnson 7 innings here because we're trying to secure home field advantage. Like it's just the reality is like those guys, you give them 2-3 innings. And that's it. You get them out because you don't want them to get hurt. And it's particularly for the pitchers, it's such a stressful thing on their bodies that you don't want to be wasting it even though it's now not an exhibition game, even still, you don't want to be wasting it in that environment. So what would happen was you'd have like, and because again, you want to get a lot of guys in the game, you'd have like, the Jeremy Burnitzes of the world, like deciding who is going to go to the World Series because they get a big double in the 9th inning of an All-Star game. And you're like, all right, like this guy plays for the Rockies were trash then. So this guy plays for the Rockies and he's deciding if the Yankees are going to be playing at home field in the World Series. Like I liked it because I like the stakes, but it was weird just because of that dynamic. Like I would think that the Yankees would want Derek Jeter on the field in the last bits of the game when they're determining who's going to have home field advantage. I'm sure, the Braves would want John Smoltz on the mound closing games to determine who's going to go to the World Series. So that wasn't happening just because of the nature of the All-Star game and just the nature of baseball. Basketball is different. Basketball, there isn't that like stress of like, oh, like this guy, we're going to have to sit him at the end of the game. We don't want to waste his energy or waste his whatever. Like baseball, obviously, you start the game and then you get taken out. You can't go back in. That's how baseball works. Duh. Basketball's not the case. You can take a guy out and he can get rest and get back in. So, to me, how awesome would it be for an East-West game where it's the end of the game, maybe it's a close game, and you have Jaylen Brown, Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Tyrese Maxey on the floor against Jokic, Wemby, Shea, Ant-Man, and home court advantage of the NBA Finals is on the line. That is going to be a game. That's going to be some great basketball, and that's going to be exciting. I think that it's the change is obvious if you care about the All-Star game. Now, if you don't care, and there are some people who say they don't care, then there's nothing you can do. I think. You can try the world thing. That would be my only option, is do 12-man world team, 12-man USA team, see if that helps. Otherwise, there's no other thing you can do to fix this thing. But you're telling me in that situation, and then the coaches that are on the coaching staff, they have, like right now it's going to be Mitch Johnson for Team USA 1, and then Jamie Bigstaff, Team USA 2, and then Darko Rajakovic for the World Team. I don't know if the Toronto Raptors really got any stake in terms of going to the finals, but I know for a fact that the Spurs and the Pistons do. You think they're going to throw the last bits of the game that has that kind of implications? They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't do that at all. So I think it's clear how to fix the All-Star game. I think you put in a situation where you say, okay, you know what? We're going to have this be deciding the NBA Finals. Who gets home court advantage? I think just try it. Just see how it goes. It may not. And if there's not like a realistic change where it doesn't really matter and the game still sucks, then just take it away. I mean, I think it's not, at this point, there's no hurt in trying it. And the reason why I also don't mind it is because the NBA schedule is imbalanced anyway. It's not like everybody plays each other the exact amount of time. So the idea that, because let's say, for example, like a lot of people think the Eastern Conference is really weak. So this is actually a great example. So let's go to the NBA standings today. I'll actually share my screen just so you can see this. So the NBA standings right now, the Thunder have the best record. They are 40, 40 and 12, 11. There you go. 40 and 11. Pistons are, I actually do this by league just so you can actually see everybody. And assuming this will actually work. There you go. And I just click Rockets by accident. Apologies. We go back. But we know that the 40 and 11 is the record for the Thunder. The Pistons have the best record in the East. They're 37 and 12. Definitely not out of the realm possibility that the Pistons could run down the Thunder and get the number 1 overall seed in the playoffs in theory. Okay, let me try this one more time so you can see. Best Pistons there. There you go. Okay, now we got the full standings. So OKC, they are 2 games up for the best record in the NBA. Pistons are 37-12. We look at just the best records of the top 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams. Of the top 5 teams, 4 of them are Western Conference teams. Pistons have the second best record in the NBA, though. Is it fair? Let's say if the Pistons do run down if they do run down the Thunder and they do get the number 1 seed, they would have home court advantage if they had to face the Thunder in the NBA Finals. Would that be fair if they're playing worse competition? Like, to me, I don't know if that is even like. Now, obviously, there's some years where like a team that is nowhere near as good as another team. Like you got a 50-win Cavs team with LeBron when he took that team to the finals the first time, right? Like those teams, they have no business having an opportunity at home court advantage in theory. But like if you have the number 1 seed East, number 1 seed in the West, and Eastern Conference is down, and the Pistons are able to overtake the Thunder, it's fair that they get the number 1 seed because they face worse competition? I don't think that's fair. To me, that's not fair. So like I don't think there's the sanctity over home field advantage in the finals or any championship game. I think it's kind of silly because we're basing it off of something that is not all common opponents. There are teams that the Thunder have to play 4 times that the Pistons only play twice. There are teams that the Pistons had to play 3 times that some teams only have to play 4 times. They have to play 4 times in their own conference. So the schedule's not balanced. So what difference does it make if you say, okay, you know what, we're going to do a different way to decide who gets home court advantage? And also, now, I do think the one thing you would say is maybe, does it, I don't know. I think it would, people would still care about the number 1 seed. It's like, would people care about getting number 1 over seed in their conference? I think they still would. And the conference that wins, you would be fighting like hell to make sure you get the number 1 seed in that conference. In that scenario where you would have an All-Star game that has a situation where, it's like, whoever won the All-Star game, that conference wins the title, gets home court advantage in the finals. So that's how I've seen it. I've always thought that made the most sense. I think there's a rationalization behind it that these aren't common opponents teams are playing, so to put just best record doesn't make sense. I almost think that it'd make more sense that whoever makes the finals, they just literally just take their common opponents and try to find a way to say, okay, we're going to take your best common opponents and we're going to determine that way who gets the home court advantage rather than just overall record. So that's outside the box way I think of how I'd approach it, but that's how I would approach it if I was doing the NBA All-Star game. We also got a real neat thing before I move on from the All-Star weekend. Jalen Duren is going to participate in the dunk contest, which I think is a cool thing. So Jalen Duren, he is an All-Star this year. He is definitely one of the better finishers in the NBA. And now he will be joining Jackson Hayes and Carter Bryant in the dunk contest field. Now, when we first heard about Jackson Hayes and Carter Bryant being in the dunk contest, I looked at that and said, what are we doing? We know Mac McClung is not going to do it this year. He's not going to go for the, I guess would be the 4-peat? I don't know, 3-peat or 4-peat. I don't know what, I think it's 4-peat at this point. So no Mac McClung, who's essentially been like a G League player for the most part, who's like had cups of coffee in the NBA, and they found a way, as I drink my cup of coffee, and they found a way to throw him in the All-Star game because he is just an incredible dunker. Like, it's just like he's almost like a novelty act when it comes to the dunks he can do. And he had an awesome performance last year, to be clear. If Mac McClung wanted to come back every year, I'd support it. But I think at a certain point they said, you know what? This is overkill. We got to find some other guys. Carter Bryant and Jackson Hayes. I mean, come on, man. This is sad. It was said not to be maybe one of the saddest dunk contest groups ever before Jalen Duren added his name, which is cool. I'm glad Jalen Duren is doing it. If you're going to do it, this is when you do it. That's the thing. Like, these guys, like, they wait all these years and years and years, and then they never do it when they become big stars. They say, oh, I'm too big a star now. It's like, no, you do it like your first All-Star game or a little earlier in your career when you're still a star, but, you still got plenty of time, and you can sit out the rest. You only got to do it once. We're not asking you to do this every year. I'm happy Jalen Duren is doing it. He's not a household name yet outside of, like, NBA circles. So I don't know if he's going to draw, like, eyeballs or anything, but it's good to at least have a very good NBA player in this thing. Like, we had, unfortunately, two kind of, journeyman type guys. In the dunk contest, Jackson Hayes definitely a journeyman. Obviously, Cardi Bryant just started his career, but he's a bench warmer at this point. So I'm excited that we actually have a guy who can actually going to see play on Sunday, and a guy who I think will potentially be a perennial All-Star. He's only 22 years old. He was a huge recruit coming out of high school. Of course, he was one of the better freshmen in his freshman year at Memphis. So we will have at least one All-Star participating in the dunk contest. From what I have seen, heard nothing else about anything happening on All-Star weekend. Like, we're now actually approaching a week away. And I don't know who's in the three-point contest. A dunk contest field has only 3 names, not 4. Typically, there's 4. Are they going to have enough guys to even do this thing? So I don't know. There's a lot that I guess to still be determined that hasn't been announced yet. I guess maybe some stuff gets announced on over the weekend. I know they held what typically was the announcement of the reserve. Typically would happen in the middle of the week on TNT. Because Peacock and NBC has it now, I guess maybe that was why they held the NBA All-Star reserves for the NBC Sunday Night Basketball. Maybe that's why they're going to hold the announcement for the other skills competitions for. Well, there's no Sunday Night Basketball this week, so yes, I don't know what they're waiting for. So I don't know what's going to happen with what's going on next week. But we do have a dunk contest field that is almost set. Is not one that I think is going to excite too many people, but we did get one All-Star. We did get one All-Star, and that is a cool thing. Let's shift gears here. Let's get to the football stuff before we get out of here again. Just remind you guys, this is 40 Days and 40 Nights with your boy EJ Stewart. It's been a fun journey in this 40 Days and 40 Nights. If you've been enjoying the show, you've been enjoying the live streams, or you want to just support the kid, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. New Generation Media is what you'll subscribe to on YouTube. Make sure you also subscribe to us on X, EJ_Stewart, which is where we are also streaming live. Also be sure to subscribe to us on Instagram. Action EJ is where you'll follow me. We also have an Instagram account, New Generation Podcast. I stream the show live from my IG Live account, so shout out to the folks that are watching on IG Live. And if you want to follow me there, make sure you follow me, Action EJ, on Instagram. And like someone else just did, 'cause I saw a thumbs up go up. If you can, we really appreciate it, man. Give us a like, man. Like the video. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. If you're watching, get in the comment section. Give me your thoughts on what's going on. Just say, hey, man, great show. Love what's happening. Shout out. Good to see you. Anything. Get in the comment section. That helps us. We greatly appreciate that. Of course, if you follow me on X, you can comment as well. If you follow me on Instagram, comment as well. And like I said before, if you can't watch these shows, you can always go to New Generation Podcast Network, wherever you get your podcasts, and you can find all the episodes of 40 Days and 40 Nights. We were talking about earlier the trade with Harden and Darius Garland. Again, TJ B023 was on earlier saying he didn't like the Harden-Mitchell fit. He is a fan of Garland and Leonard, though, if Kawhi stays healthy. Now, if the Kawhi stay healthy aspect feels almost like, can we even keep saying that at this point? Like, if he can stay healthy, he can't stay healthy. That the reality is we've learned that he can't stay healthy. So, he's playing great this year. He stayed relatively healthy this year. And it stemmed from a really strong end to the season last year. But he was playing great going into the playoffs. And he had a great playoffs, too, in that one series against Denver. So on paper, yeah, I mean, again, I think the fit actually, I think Garland's a pretty good guard for Leonard, because Leonard plays so much isolation and he draws so much attention, and Garland being such a good shooter and being so comfortable being off the ball still, again, will allow that, I think, to be a pretty good tandem. Maybe more of a natural fit than Harden and Leonard, though it may not be quite as explosive offensively. No, I like the Clippers being able to get a young all-star guard that is entering the prime of his career. Like, there's a chance they got to steal with this. There's a chance. There's a chance that Garland becomes an injury risk for his entire career, and he never reaches back to being that all-star status. That's a possibility. But sacrificing a 36-year-old James Harden and a season that, while it's been very promising because of how they've played, we know it's probably going to end the same, which is playoff disappointment. I don't think they have any problem sacrificing that. So that's why I think that they made the right decision to trade Harden once he came to him and said, I went out. Being able to get Garland out of this, I think, was a pretty good get. Never would have imagined they could have got an all-star in return for Harden. And that's what they got. So I think that was a good job by them. So I agree. I actually like the Garland Leonard fit. He also says, I was talking about Harden wanting to get out of the Western Conference. He says West is too good. Yeah, the West is a beast, man. There's no question about it. Coming into the year, I was not as convinced from other people that the West was so much better than the East. Well, let me take that back. This is always a conversation me and Perloff would argue about the West is way better than the Eastern Conference. Therefore, if the Knicks came out of the East, that they would be this perennial underdog. Which, now to be clear, they would be. So he would have been right about that. But I would still contend that when I look at the Western Conference, and if the Knicks were in it, I don't look at them and say, oh, they'd be the 7th or 8th team. I don't think that. I think they would still be, maybe not 2, but they'd be in the top 4 or 5, which is all you got to be in to be part of the conversation. I think they're better than the Lakers. I think they're better than the Suns. They're better than the T-Wolves. They're better than the Warriors. They're better than the Clippers. You want to argue with me about the Rockets and Nuggets and Spurs? Fine. But they would not be some doormat. So that's why I say that to say if it was an NBA Finals matchup, why would they be this massive underdog? When these other teams we're talking about so good in the West, we're not going to say they're massive, massive underdogs to the Thunder. So that was always the argument I had. But no, Harden, I think he's looking at the Western Conference and where the Clippers are. I can show you guys these standings one more time before we go on to some NFL stuff. But right now, the Clippers are 9th in the Western Conference. And they're 7 games back of the play-in. That's after winning 16 of 20 games. It just shows you, A, how bad they were, and B, just how hard the West is, that they could play that well. And, okay, they got themselves out of the depths of destruction in terms of the possibility they may go into the lottery and not have their first round pick and it will go to the Thunder. Now it seems like, okay, they have definitely a shot at making the playoffs. And they still have a shot, I think, even without Harden. But now you're like, ugh. I mean, okay, we did all that, but we're still 7 games out of a guaranteed playoff spot. Like, we're going to have to play our way into this thing. And if we make it, oh, congratulations, you get the Thunder in the first round. If you stay in the 9, because you would have had to beat the Blazers at the 10 and then play against the Warriors and T-Wolves to see who gets the 8th spot. Or if you find a way to get to 8 and you're able to get that first win, all right, congratulations, you get Victor Wembanyama in his first playoff series. I think Harden saw the writing on the wall and said, there's nothing for us here. There's nothing for me here. So let me get to the Eastern Conference, where the Cavs aren't some shoo-in, but at least they got a shot. The Cavs, who had a terrible start to the season as well, not as bad as the Clippers, but they were playing 500 ball for a lot of the season. Literally just right before this little 8 out of 10 stretch they've won. They're right in the mix of it. They're right in the thick of it. So now he goes to see us 5th in the Eastern Conference. I think is probably a lock to at least not get into the play-in. It's only 3.5 that they're up from out of the play-in, but I don't expect that the Heat would run them down or the Magic are going to run them down. So I think that they're probably safe as a playoff team. So now Harden's opportunity to go on a deeper run in the playoffs definitely increased. It's definitely a much better chance now with this being the situation. And now you have a possibility where James Harden will once again be thrust into big playoff moments. We've seen how that's gone in the past. So I don't think it's a guarantee that him being in those moments is necessarily the greatest thing for the Cavs, which is why when it came to this move, I was like, I wasn't as high on it as other folks were. Let's get to some NFL stuff before we get out of here, man. Again, Pro Bowl games happening this week. That happened yesterday. I said I wasn't gonna watch a second. I did lie. I did watch a second. And I watched the second. I saw Jalen Hurts throw a touchdown to Jake Ferguson. And then I was like, and then they did a 2-point conversion. And then, like, he didn't get sacked, but they said he ran out of time. I guess there's a timer for when the quarterback has to get rid of the ball. And I didn't understand the rules, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I watched probably for a total of about 2 minutes. And I said it was enough. But the Pro Bowl games happened. All the people were out in San Francisco for the Super Bowl this week. And just like Roger Goodell has his State of the Union press conference to talk about various different things, he actually did talk a little bit about the 18-game schedule as well. We didn't talk about that yesterday. He also kind of said, hey, that's not like imminent or like in the immediate plans right now. And he kind of just left it at that. He didn't really expand on it, which is interesting. We definitely had, I forgot who it was, but one of the NFL owners was saying, oh, yeah, we definitely want to get the 18 games. It might have been Robert Kraft, actually. Let me search that. I want to say Robert Kraft was the guy who said 18-game schedule was something that they wanted. If it wasn't Kraft, it was somebody. There's somebody who out there, yep, it was Robert Kraft. I knew I didn't make that up. Yeah, Robert Kraft is pushing for an 18-game schedule. He said this on January 20th. So this was just 2 weeks ago. And I'll just try to see if I can read his quote real quick. I can put it up. Not put it up, but I'll read it to you. He said, Robert Kraft said, I want to tell you guys we're going to push like the Dickens now to make the national more important to us. He said during an interview with Zolak and Bertrand, every team will go to 18 games and 2 preseason games and eliminate one of the preseason games. Every team every year will play 1 game overseas. And Robert Kraft, he's not the commissioner, but he's kind of like the commissioner. Like, there are certain owners, like, of course, if you know how sports works, the commissioner works for the owners. Like, yes, he is like the governing body of the NFL, and yes, I guess he has, license to punish owners and stuff, but the owners hire him to run the league. So he's always going to still work on the behalf of the owners. So Roger Goodell could say, 18-game schedule, hey, it's not on the table, we'll see, it's blah, 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 blah. If Robert Kraft is saying, oh, no, we're gonna go to an 18-game schedule, then that tells you what the owners are thinking. And Robert Kraft is one of the selection of owners that has that kind of swing. Like, he was big in the labor, and we heard one of the voters who said they voted for Kraft and not Bill Belichick for the Hall of Fame mentioned how during the last, real labor war that they had where there was a lockout, Robert Kraft had been one of the guys who had been instrumental in trying to get a deal and got a deal across the table. That despite he was suffering, his wife was gravely ill, was on her deathbed. So that was for a lot of folks in the NFL, he earned a lot of respect for a lot of people because of that. And Jerry Jones, Stan Kroenke, because he's got the biggest bag. Like, there are certain folks that they definitely have way more juice as owners than other people. Jeffrey Lurie, then there's the other people the Adams family out there in Tennessee, and the McNair family. There's some other folks that probably they don't have quite as much pull, but Kraft is not one of them. So if he's saying, oh yeah, 18-game schedule, that's what we're going for, we want this thing, I don't really listen to whatever the hell Roger Goodell is saying today or tomorrow or yesterday about 18-game schedule. Kraft semi-runs the league. So if he says 18-game schedule is coming, that's what they want. So the NFLPA, they now had their chance to respond because there's been a lot of talk about it, and they're saying they don't want it. There's no appetite for it. The interim head of the NFL Players Union says we should not expect the players to support adding an 18th game schedule to 18th game to the schedule, citing player and health concerns. He says, quote, this is David White speaking. He's the executive director, interim basis for the NFL Players Union. He says, the 18th game is not casual for us. It's a very serious issue. It's something that comes out of negotiations, and nothing will move forward until players have the opportunity to account for all of those factors. Taken into consideration and then through negotiations, agree or not to the 18th game. But as it stands right now, players have been very clear. They don't have any appetite for an 18th game. So he starts it kind of saying, anything's got to be negotiated. So there is some softness in there a little bit, some wiggle room in there a little bit where, and that's whenever you hear a union run to, well, you didn't negotiate with us or talk to us about something, if that's usually their first line, that usually is like a sign to me, someone who's covered now not just union stuff with sports, but, I worked for 6+ years at Spectrum News New York 1, so I've covered, local news as well. And if you cover anything in New York City, unions are massive here, so they have massive influence, they have massive responsibility, and they take care of a lot of the city, whether it's sanitation, police, fire, all different kinds of hospitals, all different kinds of unions. They're very instrumental to just the city, so therefore it becomes a very political issue with them debating and arguing with the mayor or arguing with said hospital or whatever. So I've covered this a ton. And usually language I hear is when I hear, well, that's something you talk about it, you got to have negotiations. I say, okay, you have a price, which scares me a little bit. But he does end it all, but after he kind of goes into, well, you got to have a price, you got to negotiate this, blah, blah, blah. But then he says, I want to be clear, players I've been talking to have been clear they don't want this. I hope they stand pat. I hope they don't say, hey, I'll do it for a price, because they've done a lot of stuff for a price. They've been allowing a lot of things for a price. And what ends up happening is we end up getting a 17th game because, okay, we'll make the practice schedule easier. Or we'll do X, Y, and Z, but we'll give you some more revenue. Like, at the end of the day, they've been... What I hate about some of these player unions for all the sports is they fight and fight and fight and fight, and then they agree to a CBA deal, and then they'll complain about stuff they agreed to. It's like, guys, you just had a labor negotiation where you could have stood pat. You could have said, hey, we're not doing anything until we get the kind of deal we wanted. You can't then sign the deal and then start complaining about the terms of the deal. You had a collective bargaining agreement. It's like these players that, now part of me looks at it and says, okay, I too was someone who thought that the second apron was good in the NBA. But you hear these players complaining about the second apron, and I'm like, guys, like, you knew this was what the NBA wanted. This was their, like, do or die issue, and you just laid down. You didn't even try to fight it. And now you're saying, oh, this is terrible, and, like, how did we agree to this? Like, you're blaming your leadership. Well, you hired that leadership. You gave C.J. McCollum and Grant Williams the keys to the castle. Especially considering you guys are millionaires, it's kind of hard for, I think, the lamest person, the average American, or the average just basketball fan or sports fan, to hear complaints about labor issues that you had an opportunity to actually adjudicate. Like, I think most of the time, fans, I think they're becoming smarter and understanding, oh, these owners, like, you get billions and billions of dollars off these guys. Like, you shouldn't be scratching and clawing for every little cent. Like, come on, give me a break. I think people are becoming more hip to that overall. I think people are becoming more, not saying majority, but I think there are more people that are becoming more in support of player labor situations that help the players. But you lose us when you do stuff like that. You lose a lot of people when you do stuff like that, when you start complaining about things that you could have argued for in a labor negotiation. So what I fear is going to happen is they're going to say, now we don't want an 18th game. That's not good for our bodies, not good for our health. You're not making those considerations. We're not going to do it. Only for them to then say, okay, well, actually, they gave us a 10% increase in revenue, so we're going to take it. It's like, well, then, don't tell me when your brains are mush by the end of a season, or you're talking about concussions, or you're talking about head issues, or head issues or concussions, or other physical toll issues with an 18-game schedule. You talked about this during the labor negotiation. And you told us that there was a price for you to sacrifice that. We don't now care that you're complaining about those same issues. So I hope these issues that David White is talking about, that they have with the player safety concerns, which are real, I hope that they stand true to that, man. Because look at this playoffs. Look at all the guys we lost. Look at the 49er roster. That's the best thing. Look at the 49er roster. 49er roster. Does that team look like a team that needs to be playing an 18th game? Think about some of these guys that have had their seasons ended late in the year. This just recent NFL season. We want to add another regular season game to this? I'm sorry. I love football. I do. But I also like well-played football. I like good football. And I hate the 17-game schedule. I wish it would go back to 16. I hate the idea that we could be seeing a situation where we are going to 18 games. And what that means is, again, more wear and tear on these guys' bodies, which means the quality of play will continue to decline, because I challenge you to watch the end of this past season, weeks 17 and 18, tell me that was good football. It was not. You had a good game with the Ravens and the Steelers, and that was it. There was not a lot of good football. These guys, again, their bodies have been broken down. There are a lot of teams that were tanking, a lot of teams that were not, playing for anything. Like, the idea that you're going to subject NFL fans to another week of Browns and Jets and Cardinals football for the sake of, what, more money? Come on, man. Like, nobody wants this. I'm a Jets fan. I wanted nothing to do with having the Jets see to watch Jets play another week. And a lot of these teams, fans for teams that play for bad teams, they don't want to see another regular season game. Playoffs is different. You want to expand the playoffs? We can talk about that, whether that's fair or what. We can have a different conversation about that. I'm not necessarily opposed to that, just off rip. But, like, another regular season game of watching some sorry-ass teams play, like, you know how it is. I know for some fans, like, and I know I represent the worst team in the NFL, But I also feel like there are other fan bases who support bad teams, so they know what I'm talking about. When your team is out of it by like October or November, every week is just torture. You have to sit through. It's torturous because I think bad football, I think is. Some people say I just want to watch because I like seeing guys running. I'm not like one of those guys running to each other. I'm not like that. Some people can say, "Oh, I like the violence, so I don't care. Bad football is still football." That is not me. Bad football is impossible to watch for me. Quarterbacks who can't make throws, no explosive plays, no excitement. I don't want to see 3 yards in a cloud of dust for 60 minutes between two sorry-ass teams. I don't know how people will say that they like that. And we're going to have another week of that? I can't imagine telling a Raiders fan you would have had to watch more football this year after watching that crap fest you watched for an entire season. I cannot imagine that. And you have to watch your team see if they can go 3-15 instead of 3-14. To see if the Jets could find a way to get to 3-15 instead of 3-14. Another week of tanking. And this is not a sport where half the teams make the playoffs. A majority of the teams still miss the playoffs. So that's just another week where we got more teams that are eliminated from playoff contention playing for nothing. Absolutely nothing. It is dumbfounding to me that people would actually want to sign up for that. And I hate the preseason. I'm someone, and I hate to say, one of my hot takes. I know people say, oh, hot take, whatever. I don't really think of my views as hot takes. I just think of them as my views. I'm like, oh, this is spicy. They'll like this. I don't think of it like that. But I guess one of the spicier takes I've ever had, and I still have, is I think the NFL preseason should be abolished. It will never happen because there's TV money being made. Though I think I can get around that. But because there's TV money and because there's like actual like ticket revenue and there's revenue being made at like the stadiums, they'll never do it. But I think people are coming to they've always been terrible. I think people are coming more to my side that like the actual games are like horrendous to watch. And somehow I feel like preseason football has gotten worse because actually the guys play less. Like when I was growing up, there were only like a few guys who like would never play a preseason game. Even that started kind of like later in their careers. Like Peyton Manning was never play a preseason game. Certain guys but most of the time like you would see Tom Brady and I don't know, Kurt Warner, I'm thinking of the stars at that time, Brett Favre. They would play not even just one preseason game. They would play two. Some teams would play, they're starting for 3 quarters. So you actually, there were times, okay, that third preseason game out of the 4, you were like, all right, this is kind of a real game. Like, not crazy, they call it the dress rehearsal. But, okay, we're getting, say, a decent football game here. Now, you're lucky to get a quarter out of these guys. Some teams will play guys a half. But then also now it becomes like, basically like result based in terms of how much they play. So if the first starting unit goes out there, they have a great first drive. They may have planned to play 2 quarters or planned to play a whole quarter. They may say, you know what, that drive is good enough. Go sit down. So now I'm watching like, the Mitchell Trubisky's of the world and the Pastronauts of the world playing for 3-4 quarters. Sometimes those guys don't even play. Some teams won't even play their number 2 quarterback for majority of the preseason. I'm watching literally like practice squad type guys play. So I can't stand the preseason. And I think the owners are realizing, and we've heard Goodell mention this as well, that like fans really are like, yo, preseason sucks, man. Like we got to get this thing out of here. And that's why they said, oh, if we go to 18 games, we can extend the season, and it's only 2 preseason games. I hate preseason football, but I would endure preseason football if it means I don't got to watch more bad football in the regular season. I prefer to watch bad preseason football than bad regular season football. I want the regular season to be as important, as do or die, as every game is today. The best thing the NFL has, I think the main reason why the NFL is still king is not the violence, is not, any other aspect. I think the fact that it's a short schedule. I think the fact that you only play 16 games, or now 17. Sorry, my brain went back to a yesteryear when it was glorious and I was a kid. It was a 16 game schedule. Obviously, 17 games, but like, I think because every week really does matter. Like now again, unless you're the Jets or you're the Raiders, where your season ends in October, but also to that point though, it makes even the early games of the season. There's a lot of urgency. You can't just start 0-4 like your team is cooked. You only got 13 more games left. So like there's reason for this in terms of why the NFL has been so popular. Every time you add another game, it just makes every regular season game less must watch. Because that adds more teams that are playing more games that are meaningless. Again, the Jets adding another game that is meaningless. Think about these teams that got eliminated. Again, I'm talking about the Jets and Raiders that were eliminated in like October. Think about like the Dolphins. Or think about the Chiefs. Or think about who's another team? Those are the good teams to talk about. Think about those teams. Like, those teams maybe weren't eliminated in October, but like it was like around after Thanksgiving or first week of December when it was like, okay, those teams are kind of done. They're kind of cooked. Again, now I'm adding another meaningless game for those teams. I'm just adding more teams to the pot of unwatchable football towards the end of the season. Because at least when we get to the end of the year, we know, okay, these are the teams I don't have to watch anymore. I only got to watch these 3 games, basically, that have any kind of stakes. If I'm adding an 18th game, that means that's another game with those teams also having nothing to play for. So what's the point? What are we doing? Like, who wants to see? I've got the guy that was playing for the Chiefs at the end of the year. Who was that quarterback? They had some guy I literally never heard before. Because of course they had Mahomes got hurt, and then Minshew got hurt as well. Yeah, they had Chris Oladokun. Sorry, probably for mispronunciation of the name. They had that brother playing out there. I want to see him for another week. I gotta watch Brady cook for the Jets another week. Geno Smith is an established player, but I gotta watch Geno Smith for another week of that crap that he was putting out there. I think the NFL doesn't like. I know, and they know this, but they're making this call. They're pushing for this because they feel like it is beneficial to them from a money standpoint. But I think for the fans, like, oh yeah, no, good football, yeah, more football. I don't think they're thinking this thing through. There are only a certain amount of teams where those games at the end of the season will matter. It is why people hate the NBA regular season, because there are so many games, and because there isn't as much urgency for a lot of teams, because they can make up losses early in the year and stuff. You can finagle the schedule however you want, and then you get to like March or early April, and there are so many teams that are just trying to lose as many games as possible to help their draft stock. The games become unwatchable. You have teams that are playing. The Knicks beat the Wizards yesterday by 30 plus points. The Wizards have a healthy Trae Young that they're sitting on the bench because they want to ensure that they keep their draft pick, because if they get outside the top 8 or bottom 8, if you want to say, of the draft, that means that they lose their first round pick. You got teams, it's February 4th and teams are already in full tank mode. And we know the NFL is never going to go to an 82 game schedule or anything crazy. But when you keep going down the line, you just keep testing the waters for like making your regular season more and more meaningless, and in turn making your product less must see. The minute you sacrifice your product being less must see for money, that is usually the decline of your product. It's what boxing did with pay-per-view. This thing is must see. Well, let's put it on pay-per-view, and know some people just won't pay for it because they don't want to see it, but we'll get money out of it. How does that work for boxing? How does that work out? UFC had to shift their dynamic. They realized, we got to go to a streaming service. We can't be asking people to pay $80 a month to watch a fight. WWE had to go to streaming option. We can't ask people to pay $60 every week for a pay-per-view event, every month for a pay-per-view event. That's crazy. Nobody's doing that. Especially with all these piracy things going on. When you limit access or you make your product less must-see, people will go other places. They're not going to just give you bread. It doesn't work that way. So, I mean, I'm looking at this thing, man, 18 games. Who the hell wants that? I mean, this is something there are some things, like, there are both sides of things. I'm someone, again, one of the unofficial rules, anytime I step to a show, EJ just wants things to be fair. I'm one of those folks where I can usually see both sides to a lot of different things. I may have an opinion that's one way, but I can see good points on another side. This is one I don't see any good points to as to why a fan would want an 18-game schedule. Owners, I understand why they want it. They want it because they feel like they can make a lot of money. And they know we're dummies and we're going to keep watching anyway. But if you're a fan, why the hell would you support this? Why would you want this? Think about all those miserable games you have to watch at the end of the year. All you're adding is another week of misery before you get to the real games. I want to get to the playoffs as early as possible. I want to get to the true do-or-die games as early as possible. That's what we should try to work towards. Not going further away from getting to the big games that matter. Not getting low. Let's watch more Jets before we get to see whether or not Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen gets over the hump and wins the Super Bowl. No. We got to watch another week of the Raiders. No, we're not going to go wait to see if Detroit can go from lovable losers to becoming Super Bowl champs. No, we got to watch another week of the New Orleans Saints before we get to that. Think about it in your head. That makes no sense. Why would you support that? It is ridiculous to me. Bob Custer's in the chat. EJ, good morning. NFL should be 2 preseason games. I recall when it was 6 preseason games. That, I know. I've heard about this era when it was 6 preseason games. I can't even fathom that. Like, I don't know. Like, I can't imagine what did that even look like. Like, I assume the guys played probably more. Like, they probably played more seriously, I assume. Like, that had to be horrendous. 6 preseason NFL games. And again, like, the NBA, they've also limited their preseason. And they've done it without even adding regular season games. But they've limited their preseason. And mostly because, like, the NBA preseason is not the moneymaker. The NFL preseason is. So then they just said, we'll cut the cost just to get to the regular season. People are already mad at our regular season. We're not going to sit them through 6 preseason games. Because the NBA used to be a lot of preseason games. That's not the case anymore. For 6 weeks of NFL preseason football, because again, this is a weekly sport. It's not like, NBA, you can play 3 games in a week in theory. You can play two games in a week in theory. So you can get through a preseason schedule kind of quickly, even with a lot of games. NFL is not the case. They got a week of rest. So I'm like, imagine sitting through 6 weeks of preseason is insane. I don't know how the OGs did it. I don't know how the OG fans did it. That sounds crazy to me. Wild stuff. So the NFLPA apparently has no appetite for an 18-game schedule. I hope that they stand pat with that. I hope that they keep their word because I certainly have no appetite for it. And I'm going to keep banging this drum, man. Because I think fans, if they think about it, they know I'm right. I think on the surface, they good, more football. Who's that hurt? I'm like, really seriously think about what you're saying. Like, I know, like, yes, in theory, more football, we like football. But really think about what they're proposing. Yes, an 18th game. Yes, of course, that means another Josh Allen game. It means another Lamar Jackson game, another Patrick Mahomes game. Yes, that is true. Though, it's also true that those teams also may be playing meaningless games as well. Some teams are so high up in the standings, and they've already secured home field, or their playoff positions already locked, that they start also tanking games at the end of the season. So you got to think about that as well. But okay, just take that to the side. Yes, those handful of teams, a handful of players you want to watch for another game, cool. Let's also think about what is the majority of the NFL, which is the garbage that we have, which means that's also another game for the Titans. It's another game to watch the Jets, the Giants, the Saints, the Raiders, the Cardinals, the Dolphins. Really? You want to sign up to have those teams play another game that means nothing? I'm sorry, watching those teams play is painful for me. They are horrendous. It's not entertaining. That is not a good entertainment product to put the Jets on for another week of football. It is not a good entertainment product to put on the New Orleans Saints for another week of football. It is not a good entertainment product to put on the Tennessee Titans for another week of meaningless football. I know you're saying, we're getting rid of the meaningless regular season, preseason games out of regular season game. I promise you, These will also be meaningless games. That, I think, is what's getting lost in this. Is just saying, oh, we're adding a mean. It's the con of this whole thing. We're adding a meaningful game as opposed to a meaningless game. No, it's going to be meaningful for 6 teams maybe. It's going to be meaningless for a lot of other teams, and the real bottom teams that we've been watching, like, it's going to be really, really tough to watch those teams play. You're not adding a meaningful game. You're adding a meaningless game to the regular season, because that's what you're doing. Every game that you add, the game becomes more meaningless. That's how this works. That's the sliders of this thing. Why do you think baseball plays 162 games and you have guys that can miss 10, 15 games just by just taking days off? It's only, I mean, now we have it in the NBA too, but it's not as, now we call it load management. But baseball's the only sport we have guys that just literally, they're taking a day off. Like, it's like a 9-to-5 job. But guess what? They play every day. They play like it's a 9-to-5 job. But certain games are so, like, quote-unquote meaningless that they say, we're going to give Aaron Judge a day off. He's been playing a lot. He's a little tired, and he could use a rest. There are no such thing as days off in the NFL. That's because the games matter so much. Every time you add another regular season game, it just makes every game on the schedule less meaningful. And you walk down the path of going the way of baseball and of basketball every time you keep doing this. Stop it. No more added games. Last thing before we get out of here. I mentioned earlier, George Pickens. He spoke to the Dallas Cowboy team website about his future. Crazy, by the way, that the team website is getting quotes like this, like they're like ESPN or SI or Bleacher Report or something like that. But he made comments. I assume this was at the Pro Bowl where they saw him, but it could also have been just on, during Super Bowl week. And, he was asked about his looming free agency and what's going to happen. He says that, he does hope to remain a Dallas Cowboy, but he also knows that a lot of that is out of his hands. And at the end of the day, he knows that the Cowboys are going to have to pay up in order for him to remain with the team long term. Or, in other words,
yesterday's price is not today's price.
Sorry, what was that, Joe Crack?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Almost literally what George Pickens said in this little interview he did. He said when it came to his looming free agency, and yes, yesterday's price is not today's price. The quote was, I feel like if anything, in terms of his price, I feel like if anything, it went up. But me personally, my value is just a playmaker type of guy. I feel like any team or wherever I play, I can play in Canada. I just want them to know I'm definitely a playmaker. So George Pickens, if he does get franchise tagged, which is a possibility, that would give him a salary of about $28 million. But of course, that's just a 1-year salary, and most players don't want to deal with no franchise tag. If he does get a long-term deal, you would expect. I thought the NFL.com article talked about it'd be upwards of $20 million a year. That seems low. Yes, so Pickens will command upwards of $20 million a year moving forward, with a franchise tag estimate to guarantee him $28 million. He ain't getting no $20 million. I mean, we could just look at the highest paid receivers in the NFL, but I mean, you got Terry McLaurin's making what, 33, 34 just from this past year? Jamar Chase is making 40. Justin Jefferson is making 35. CeeDee Lamb his AAV is making 34. Though next year the AAV comes down just in terms of that year's salary because he signed a huge bonus. Excuse me. DK Metcalf, $33 million. Gary Wilson, $32 million. Yeah, it ain't no gonna be a $20 million. I don't know what that article was talking about. I mean, George Pickens, he caught for 93 catches. He had over 1,400 yards this year. He had 9 touchdowns. He's gonna get $30 million. I'll say it right here. He's gonna get $30 million. AJ Brown's making 32. I mean, I'm looking at these guys. Like, these are guys. Like, you can't tell me that the season he had, he doesn't command elite receiver money. Brandon Ayuk making $30 million. Amon-Ra St. Brown's making $30 million. Like, he's getting 30. And the Cowboys, their cap situation is not like, oh, they're just like, they could just burn. They have money to burn, per se. Like, remember, they had all these issues regarding Michael Parsons and whether or not they wanted to pay him. Like, they're not like a just, they can just spend money just because they even losing Michael Parsons. They still have high-priced guys. They obviously have what's it called? They obviously have Dak Prescott, highest paid player in the NFL, highest paid quarterback. They have obviously CeeDee Lamb. They have Tyler Smith. They have now Kenny Clark. Actually, is a pretty high priced guy as well. He's not making as much as Michael Parsons, but he's making a ton. They definitely have some cap issues. They're gonna have to move some stuff around. Let me see if I can get you Cowboys salary cap situation. It's the NFL salary cap. It's 2026. I just want to make sure I have these numbers right before I start tweeting them out there. So right now, the Cowboys coming into this offseason, they have negative cap space right now. That is like they need to cut salary. So they're gonna have to do some maneuvering. They gotta figure things out. They got a roster of 54. They have 54 guys that they're paying, and they got dead cap money. Effective cap space right now, they're minus 36 million. That's crazy. So they have to restructure some deals. I expect Kenny Clark to be a guy that they restructure. They just paid Tyler Smith, so I don't know if you're restructuring him. But they're gonna have to figure this out. I mean, I could show you guys this. This is from Over the Cap. Shout out to Over the Cap. They do the Lord's work, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to putting the money together and showing us everybody's salaries. But you got Dak, who's gonna make a base salary of $40 million. CeeDee Lamb 25, Tyler Smith 23, Quinnen 20. Quinnen also is coming up too, as far as money we spent. Kenny Clark's making 8, and you got Osa making 16. They got a bunch of guys in the 10 range. Like they're gonna have to cut some salary. Like they got some issues. Demario Overshown hasn't been paid yet. Like, yeah, their cap sheet is not in a good spot at all. Yeah, right now they have the cap space right now is negative 28 million. That is where they're at right now. I don't think I've ever seen a team. Well, there are actually a couple teams when I looked, and you'll see here, that have quote unquote negative cap space. Again, teams can make some cuts. They'll make some moves, but the Cowboys have among one of the worst cap sheets in the NFL. Literally, only the Vikings and Chiefs have worse cap sheets heading into this offseason. When you look at teams that have money to spend, Titans, Raiders, Chargers, and Jets will be the teams that will have the most money. Titans have $100 million in cap space because they're paying essentially nobody. But yeah, the Cowboys, in terms of George Pickens, this is not gonna go, I think, as well as maybe Cowboys fans may hope. And that is something to be wary of because George Pickens, he's not the kind of guy I want to have around when he's not happy. Ask the Pittsburgh Steelers. He went to Dallas. He put on a brave face. He did all the things they asked him to do. And he was a pretty good model citizen. I know he was late to like a team bus, which was why he was benched for a quarter or a series against the Raiders on Monday Night Football. It wasn't just him. It was also CeeDee Lamb as well. So be wary about this. Like, if you can't pay him and you got to slow walk this thing, he's the kind of guy that may make life uncomfortable for them. They better figure out how they're going to clear this cap space to get him paid if they want to keep him. Because I think they kind of got to keep him. But I'll pause and say this, though. There were moments last year as they were trying to get to the playoffs and they was turning the season around where it was time for George Pickens to step up to the plate and show, okay, this is why we're going to pay you this big money that you want. And, famously that Sunday Night Football game, or maybe it was Monday night against the Lions, where CeeDee Lamb goes out and you're playing the Lions, the high-powered offense we knew was going to be a high-tempo, high-price kind of game. This was definitely going to be a price of admission kind of game. You wanted to watch these guys play. And he's moping around, dropping the ball, not playing that hard. Seemed like he wasn't giving all the great effort. And it's like, this is the thing that scares people about George Pickens. Is that when now we're all talking about, we're singing his praises. He has, 2 games back-to-back where he catches for over 140 yards. They beat the Chiefs where he catches for 88 yards and a touchdown. Or no touchdown, but he caught for 88 yards. And him and CeeDee Lamb were going demolition derby on the Chiefs defense rather. You're like, all right, listen, the Cowboys may sneak into this thing if they play well, and then you lose 2 games in a row, and you're kind of a no-show against the Lions when they needed you. You're a no-show against the Vikings when they needed you, and now your season's over. So some of that, and then also the sideline stuff. Again, you started to see some of that stuff that creep in that we complained about with George Pickens. So is he a guy you can trust with money? Is a question that the Cowboys really have to ask themselves. If he is not, considering the season he had, you definitely, I think, have to be open to trading him too. Now, you can say, all right, well, what happens? Are the Cowboys going to be in a position to actually find a way to, how are they going to find a way to actually compete for a championship if they trade George Pickens? Newsflash, they're not. They're not. I don't know if they're competing for a title with him, and I'm not sure they're going to be, damn sure they're going to compete for a title without him. So I do think the Cowboys are in a position where they do have to do kind of asset management with how this works. And if you can get a first-round pick for George Pickens and clear that money off the books that would be coming to you, that's something I think you should also consider as well. Because you could pay him, and maybe he still is good, and maybe he's a good soldier, and he's able to overcome some of these shortcomings we saw in big games. But he's George Pickens, and we've seen him have these issues in his career. I would just be a little wary of that. I would definitely be open to trading him if I could get a first-round pick, which I think you could. For how good as he played this year, I think some team would give you a first. Now, if you can't get a first, I don't know if I'm trading him. A second-round pick, I don't know if that's getting me out of bed for a guy who had almost 100 catches. But first-round pick, I think you definitely consider it. And, yeah, the prices went up, and they got a lot of guys that have gotten paid. My feeling on it is I think the Cowboys, and what will probably happen, I think they'll probably franchise tag him, but I think they're going to have to cut bait with a lot of those guys on the team. There are a lot of guys, there's a lot of trimming of fat that has to happen with that team. I wouldn't be surprised if Dak Prescott restructures his contract. They'll probably come to him and say, hey, Dak, we signed you that deal. You got all that guaranteed money, but, we're getting killed here. Is there a way we can adjust this to a bonus somehow, or you get your money on the back end so we can clear this up so we can sign George Pickens? I'm sure, considering he's the quarterback and he's going to want CD and Pickens together, I'm sure he says yes. Can you rip up Quentin Williams' contract and say, okay, you're making $20 million next year. Let's re-sign you. Let's bring your cap number down, give you a huge signing bonus, and bring down your base salary. There's some things they could do to get there, but they're still so far away from where they have to be that this is not going to be an easy rebuild at all when it comes to fixing their cap situation. When you see this, it kind of makes sense why they traded Micah Parsons, to be honest. You look at this, you look how bad their cap situation is, and you're like, yeah, I mean, if they were paying Micah Parsons $40 million a year to go along with Dak Prescott and CD Lamb, it does seem like where is the money going to come from unless they're able to maneuver it in a way that makes it happen. The NFL cap, I feel like most fans, I feel like the NBA salary cap, with the second name for this stuff, it can be complicated, but I think generally fans have some idea of how the cap works. Hockey, I think generally fans have some idea how the cap works. Baseball, there is no salary cap. There's luxury tax. I think even that, generally fans know, okay, if you pay a certain amount of money to salary, you got to give up all these luxury tax payments. Football, the salary cap sometimes it seems like it's real, and then teams have to make tough decisions or decisions they don't want to make because of the salary cap implications. But then you see the Eagles just seem like they sign every guy that's good and trade for every guy that's good, and they never seem to have any issues. I don't know how it works. The Chiefs, same thing. They were able to just re-sign their guys, sign this guy, sign that guy, trade for that guy, and they never have the cap issues. And it seems like the Cowboys, who are not nearly as good as the Eagles or the Chiefs, somehow find themselves where their cap situation is screwed up and they can't fix it. And then they blame the salary cap. I'm like, well, how come it's not an issue for the Eagles? The Eagles got way better players than you. It seems like they have way more expensive players than you. They seem to have figured it out. How come you haven't figured it out? So that's the other aspect of this, is why this is also going to be complicated, because I don't have confidence the Cowboys are the kind of team that can actually maneuver this thing. Now, if this was Howie Roseman, he may be able to figure out a way to get George Pickens under the salary cap and get them going for next year. Is Jerry Jones going to figure that out? Is Stephen Jones going to figure that out? I don't know. I think this is going to be a long, tedious process for the Cowboys to fix this thing. It may be easier just to cut bait with George Pickens, to be honest. But because of his production and because of what truly was a dangerous tandem and a tandem that looks like would cause a lot of teams problems with Pickens and Lamb, I know they don't want to do that. Which is why I think we're going to see a franchise tag situation. Do you have a holdout if he gets on the franchise tag? That's going to be a good question for this off season. That's going to do it, man, for this edition of 40 Days and 40 Nights. I want to thank you guys for checking out today's episode. Of course, you can catch all of these shows on our YouTube channel, New Generation Media. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you also follow us on X, EJ_Stewart and New Generation Pod, and on Instagram, Action EJ New Generation Podcast. Night 18 begins at 6 p.m. sharp, So be there or be square. Again, this is EJ Stewart for 40 Days and 40 Nights. I see you a little bit later. Peace.